All right. Good evening. Welcome back to another talk show, another session from a new series. This is Hurricane H, and you're watching the iHealth channel and live listening on the iHealth radio. Today's topic will be a little different, but very related to some of the stuff we've covered in past shows. And it is called MCO World, Managed Care Organizations World. And it's really an introduction to the terminology of managed care, the world of managed care, which is a form that it takes a shape as an insurance, potential. And so we'll talk about that. We hear a lot of these terms, managed care organizations, MCOs, managed care, Medicaid managed care, Medicare managed care, MA plans. I've mentioned some of those words in previous topics. And so today we'll just kind of break down this particular entity and this particular industry, if you want to call it that, because it is an industry and it is a healthcare industry component, so it's related to our channel. And we will be covering a lot more in this particular series. Today is just the introduction and defining a little bit the world of managed care and what it is, what's the connection, who's what where, and then ultimately in the future episodes of this series we'll talk more and deep dive into specifically with a focus on the government programs, managed care types, and how they operate from soup to nuts, from A to Z. So that being said, the definition of managed care as a whole is basically a healthcare delivery system that provides preventative care and also kind of reduces or controls the healthcare cost. And obviously somebody runs these types of concepts, and these are managed care organizations, and they take different forms and shapes, and many groups can be formed as MCOs, and so those could be providers, individual provider practices, it could be groups, it could be managed care organization, in the provider settings, hospital systems, independent practice associations, like IPAs. So these are all different groups that actually can get together, and a lot of the insurance companies that deal with the government programs, for example, have been pretty much created started by MCOs or managed care organizations, and a lot of those are the providers who actually get together and contract with insurers and ultimately or create their own insurance companies to provide healthcare types of policies to potential members. And so in the form of that, they provide insurance. And so before we move forward, let me also define what the insurance is. So insurance is actually a means of protection against some loss, financial loss, and an insurer and insured, together. So the insured it's an individual or a group that actually basically has agreed to have some sort of a loss or short-term loss or an agreed upon loss, which is in the form of a payment of a premium to an insurer who accepts that and basically in exchange agrees to compensate in the event a covered loss occurs. So therefore, if you are an individual, you buy a policy through an insurer or an insurance company, the company ultimately will agree to pay you back, if you're incurring any type of loss. So whatever you agree on, whether it's a particular item, property, something that you agree that you actually have coverage for, it could be, basically those items are listed, enumerated. They give you, some sort of a process in place and some in terms of deductibles and what's covered, what's not covered, and so on and so forth. You agree to the terms. And ultimately, if that risk, if that particular loss occurs, the insurer, ultimately compensates, for that, that loss that you've already agreed upon in the first place, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like the concept, So and again, it's not a new concept. We probably all hear about insurance. Everybody has some sort of an insurance policy, and they come in a lot of different forms. Most of these policies are pretty much in the commercial world. And so we refer to it as commercial insurance. And commercial insurance is, kind of a term that distinguishes itself from anything that is government insurance. And so commercial insurance can be done pretty much by any public, for-profit entity. Basically those are companies that are for-profit and, or they're public, and they actually put policies together. And us as individuals or groups or employers, basically buying policies from them, and pretty much to cover our employees or ourselves, our families, for particular, loss prevention. And so there's a lot of different types of insurance policies out there, open insurance types. So there's life insurance. Again, with life insurance, a little different. You're not, going against anything in particular that's a loss. The loss is for somebody's life, and then the beneficiaries of that particular individual will be the beneficiaries, of that particular policy, and they're the ones who will basically get that compensation. God forbid if that person passes on. So, and there's also, health insurance, and that's actually where we're going to focus more in the world of the government programs. And there's property and casualty, so everything that is property insurance, liability insurance for car, things like that, comprehensive collision, all that stuff that you buy for your regular day-to-day life. You drive a vehicle, you need insurance. It's the law. And so there are companies that specialize in those particular products. And when I talked in the previous series, the Broker Live, we talked a little bit about in general what brokers are, and we focus more on the Medicare or government or like accident, type of health insurance. Accident and health insurance specifically. But then for that same reason, some of these other policies that are available, some other courses and some other brokers that are out there, they specialize in the property and casualty world, and therefore they cover specifically the items that I just mentioned, which is basically anything property type. And then you have, fire protection, there's workers' comp insurance, there's all kind of levels of insurance out there. There's marine insurance. So if you think about it, there's an insurance policy for it. That's kind of like, literally how we, just, joke about it, but that's a fact. And there are, balloon policies, there's, comprehensive policies, there's package policies, there's all kind of stuff that you can literally in the commercial world. And these insurance companies basically go to the local state, they file in, they become, an insurer, they have an action insurance certificate as a provider. And once they have that, they can, of course, they have to go through a lot of scrutiny and regulations, processes that we'll probably discuss in detail as we go into deep dive with this particular series. And we'll break that down, step by step as what's needed, which government agencies, time frames and things like that, some of the requirements and some of the contingencies that, the government has for these insurers. And so that's the insurance. And again, that's commercial. And then you have the government insurance products or government insurance, policies that are issued by the government. So Medicare, federally qualified. We've talked about that with the Senior Health series, at least as an introduction. We'll deep dive again in that particular talk show series. And then you have Medicaid, federally funded, state, run and, mingled with the funding there and the operation. And then you have like some of the state, insurance, for children, so like the CHIP programs. So those are some of the government, products out there. And then you have the actual managed organizations that actually, as we started the conversation, which is this particular topic series topic, MCO world. And so the managed care organization is kind of like, contract, either with individual commercial, insurers or with the government and create their own insurance companies that are specifically like Medicare or government program managed care type organizations. And so in our focus, we'll concentrate more a little bit on the managed care in the world of government. So Medicare managed care, Medicaid managed care. But before we go deeper dive into this, I want to go back a little bit in the history of those types of programs. So we all know about Medicare. I kind of introduced some of it, and a lot of us may know more about Medicare than we think we know. And there's also the Medicaid. And in the world of Medicare or Medicaid managed care, there's a lot of discussion. Prior to go there, there's also the form of these insurance. So a lot of these insurance products come in kind of two different main buckets. So a PPO, preferred provider organization, or an HMO, health maintenance organization. So depending on the actual definition of which type of product, they constitute or put together, there is some limitations or some differentiations. The first limitations or differentiation between one and the other is really networks. So the way it works, these insurance companies develop these products, and if they develop or they're licensed as an HMO, they'll have to have a network. And basically the main difference is you'll have to have a primary care doctor. We used to refer to that as a gatekeeper, someone who actually you have to go first see, and then they will ultimately determine if you need any other specialty type of care or follow up with a specialist of any kind. And then you have a network, and you have to be confined to that network. And that's kind of like more or less how the HMO works. So you can't just go. There's usually a referral between the primary care physician to a specialist or any other services outside of the primary care settings other than preventative. And then you have your PPO, which will be, again, the preferred provider organizations. They give you a little bit more. There's a network, but there's an ability to go outside network, if you're willing to pay the extra cost for that. You pay a little higher for these types of flexibilities, but at the end of the day, you have the two worlds. And, some of the companies, some of the larger insurance companies provide combination of different products. They have HMO products and PPO products, and some of them are specialized just as HMOs. There's other licenses, like prepaid health services plans. There are different variations of these things, but they all kind of work the same as the HMO format. As I had mentioned in the senior health series, there's also private fee-for-service, different type of coverages for specific products. So there's a lot of different things in details that we can talk about as we dive into the MCO world and managed care or Medicare and Medicaid managed care worlds. So the next sessions we'll go into a topic, and we'll just break it down step by step. So that's kind of like the overall picture of the managed care world. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. So I had mentioned before, I started in this industry about a little over 25 years ago, and at that time, managed care organizations started booming in the government programs. And the reason is that there was a template, there was a model in the commercial world, and the commercial world was working. I mean, they'd been in existence for many years. Mostly didn't have the Blues, the Blue Cross Blue Shields. You had like in New York at the time, health insurance plan in New York started in the 50s. So some of these plans were like literally the pioneers and started in the commercial world back then, and primarily to cover employers and employees and in a different variety groups, small groups, business, those kind of things. And then people also had the ability to buy policies direct for themselves, individuals, or for family packages, and those are all commercial. So you get a package, you see the one that you can actually afford in terms of deductibles, premiums, and all that stuff. You pick it. It gives you a set of network that you can go to, some benefits, prescription drugs, no prescription drugs, vision care, no vision care, dental care, no dental care, or you can buy different policies separately and have a different kind of portfolio of policies that you have and different cards that you can use for different services needed. But then that system was good because it was kind of like managed properly. These companies know how to work, in their risk, share. So basically, the insurance world works very simply. You have enough people enrolled into a product or a plan, and some are sicker than others, and obviously all the premiums go into a pool that's shared across the board. Some people are sicker than the others, so that's kind of like how it manages itself. Obviously there's a whole process for that, but in a very simplified format, that's how it goes. So insurance company gets all these dollars, and they manage the care of each individual based on their need, and that's why they have those kind of formulas of gatekeepers and care managers and authorizations and referrals to just manage how that process is. And so there's no fraud, waste, or abuse at that point, and ensure that people are not just going to a doctor because they want to. People are not just showing up to a hospital because they feel like they're going to, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Again, the key earlier I mentioned is preventive, like managed care is, a delivery system, healthcare delivery system that promotes preventative care. So these companies or these insurers have literally, mastered the art of controlling these risks, and in the commercial world, that's been in existence for years. So in the early 80s, there were obviously, Medicare and Medicaid, existed. So the state programs existed for the people who have, a certain level of poverty. And if they met a certain federal level of poverty or below with some resources, they qualify for state programs, Medicaid specifically, and or other state programs that are available. And then you have the folks that are on Medicare. They just had their red, white, blue card at the time, the original Medicare, but they had to have co-pays and co-share and co-insurance and all that, with some sort of a Medicare policy. But that, we'll talk about that in a minute, because that happened later. So in the world of Medicaid specifically, there was a lot of utilization. And in the early 80s, there was really a big, law. And in the government, obviously, someone has Medicaid, they qualify, what happens? They'll go, and we used to joke about it, you have Medicaid, you have an actual gold card. And it's like a credit card for care. You can go to any provider at any given time and basically show the card, as long as they are approved by the state to be a Medicaid, provider. You can actually see yourself, at that facility. So, and they can see you and provide you care. And with that being said, there was obviously a lot of utilization, and not so much because, people, have the card, they just go, but people feel sick. And, ultimately I'm talking about this show today, and we are facing a pandemic across, the whole globe. And so insurance is a very big piece of our, healthcare, and that's why we cover it. That's what my, background is, and I've been in it in a long time. And understanding that it's a needed, as I said last time, evil. You cannot, necessarily live without it. I mean, you can. I mean, it'll cost you a lot more to actually see providers whenever you want to, if you're gonna, be a self-pay and just keep paying. And God forbid, you have a catastrophic event and you go to hospital, that you could lose, an arm, a leg, a shirt, the house, everything, right? Your savings, many, we've heard cases, over the years where people literally get, devastated by medical bills. Then you get into, collection agencies and this stuff, and sometimes literally people, lose everything. So the managed care concept came. So if you do qualify based on your resources and your income, and you meet the certain criteria for any state, then you qualify for Medicaid. So in the past, you did. You get the card, you can go anywhere. And so people literally, and this is just true historic facts, people that had the card, they did not have any reason not to go to a doctor when they felt ill, right? So it's not like, I get a fever, do I go to the doctor, do I go just buy Tylenol? They will literally sometimes don't even have a primary doctor. So they just walk into an ER when they feel sick, and that's it. Now, we all know if you go in an emergency room, the first thing in emergency room is, they're going to take you, they're going to triage you, they're going to take you inside. And if they feel something, they'll probably, hold you for a few hours and then discharge you. But that little brief moment that you spend in the ER can be very costly. It can be a few $1,000s, from bill to the actual government at that point, especially in those days. And, of course, the government has some restrictions. They don't just pay whatever, they're being told. But at the end of the day, it adds up. If someone goes to the emergency for every time they have a cold or a flu, or they just have a stomach ache, that can add up quickly. And so there was no controls. There was no measures. There's no way for them to know who's going where. And so that was one. But they do know that, the commercial plans had controls, because they had the networks, they had the gatekeepers, they have the referral, the authorization, the pre-auths, they have all the processes in place. So therefore, why can't we just kind of copy that and kind of organize it, and control a little bit our, at least visual in terms of what our healthcare costs going to be for a particular year, for how many people are actually in the roles of this particular program. So if there are 100,000 people in the Medicaid program in a particular area, we know who they are. If we can control them somehow and be able to provide them all the care they need, but with the right body to kind of control those deliveries and how the access is, then maybe the government can literally control the overspending in this particular area, but still be able to manage and provide the best potential preventative care to these folks. And if they need anything advanced, care, and more than just preventative, they will get it, but they'll get it in due process. They'll get it with the right authorization, and not, just because somebody. Now, remember, we're talking right now, so far, I'm just talking about the consumers and the participant in these programs and using the services, but there are also other factors that were involved in those days. And because the program also didn't pay much, to the providers. So, I mean, these programs, Medicaid, government, programs did not pay a lot, to the providers in these days. So what happened then is that, as a provider, I would probably overbill. And while that is, fraud, waste, and abuse, today is very heavily regulated. Back in the days, we've heard about cases of doctors, getting, arrested or, indicted. There was indictments and things like that for these folks, under, fraud and, basically using the system to their advantage, whatever. So there were a few cases, the historic cases, in a lot of states. And so between the overutilization of the actual consumers and the somewhat level of abuse with some providers, and those two combination basically cost an arm, and a leg to the government, and they had to find a way to control that. And so the way to do this, they looked at what was working, and what was working is the commercial plans that were in existence. They had an actual platform that was working. They had an actual model. They had a pilot program that was successful. So they thought about, well, how do we do this? So they started kind of doing a test run, for anyone that had Medicaid. And this used in New York, for example, used to be called the demonstration, project. And so they picked up certain categories of Medicaid. If you qualified into some of these types of Medicaid, Medicaid at the time, there was different levels based on different needs. And if you qualified for one or two, you have to be mandated into a particular plan. So what they did, they allowed some insurance companies and some MCOs, to actually provide, programs and products in certain, demonstration areas. And so some providers, got themselves together. They went to the government, they applied, they got approved, and they got licenses to provide insurance products that actually specialize in these particular government programs. At first, it was Medicaid and the CHIP programs, or the State Insurance for Children programs. And so those kind of, were the first programs. And actually, literally, I was one of the very few, or first people that were actually agents in this particular world at the time. So we were the first, kind of troops out there trying to talk to people and converting them from what we used to call fee-for-service Medicaid into, the managed care Medicaid. And of course, there was a lot of resistance when we were out there. It was very brutal because you talk to people and they look at you like, why am I going to view my card? I can go anywhere I want. You tell me I have to be going to this doctor. I cannot go here. I cannot go there. It was a very, very difficult task ahead of us because we had to convince these people as to what the benefits are. And the key benefit really is simply this. If you keep going, and I always ask the question, do you really want to go to the emergency room every time you actually have, a headache or you feel you have a cold? And have you been to the emergency room? They said, well, usually people answer to me and the answer will be like, well, no, I hate the emergency room. Well, why? Because I go there, spend time, and they give me, just a note, go see your doctor, and Monday morning, whatever it is, the next day, and they give you some Tylenol just to keep the pain low, and that's it. So that was kind of the reaction. I'm like, well, would you rather do that, or would you rather have an actual provider that provides you the best care that you need and knows your history, knows everything, they have your file, they have your records, and be able to manage your care and prevent you from actually going to an unnecessary trip to the ER, and basically that's it. And if you can get all that care and you don't need to end up in the emergency room overnight, you don't have to, right? So people are like, well, that makes sense. And then they started slowly coming around and, buying into the concept. So slowly but surely, these insurance companies started flourishing, and a lot of them merged out, and a lot of them started to be successful. And obviously, the program succeeded slowly, and in no time, in a short time period, a lot of people, started getting into the managed care in the Medicaid first, and then in that same time frame, so in the late 80s, early 90s, that's kind of like where it all started trickling. Then the Medicare, kind of started also in the world of managed care. So it works for Medicaid. Why don't we try in the Medicare space as well? So now there were different contracts at the time. The CMS, or the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, used to be called the Healthcare Financing Administration, or HCFA. So they actually the ones who said, okay, we're going to do this as well. But they controlled, they were basically the one that controlled the Medicare, funds as well. But at that point, they said, okay, it's working for these guys. We did the demo here. It can work as well for the Medicare. So they did similar concepts, and some plans also applied to actually provide these Medicare Advantage. Well, that was not the call then, the Medicare, managed care piece of it. So some of these plans had Medicaid managed care and Medicare managed care products at the same time. And of course, it was just starting, and this, again, it was in the early 90s, and that's how it started. And ultimately, by the late 99, 98, 99, in a lot of the states, they started mandating for anyone that actually had Medicaid to actually select a plan or be assigned to a plan. So they got basically mandated into health plans and managed care, and MCOs. And ultimately, if you became, Medicaid eligible at any given time, and you basically applied through a state program, you qualified. There were a few exceptions in the beginning, and then ultimately everybody had to roll in. So by 2000, 2001 is all done. Everybody, you qualify for Medicaid, you apply for Medicaid, you wind up literally right into a health plan. If you don't select one yourself, it gets assigned to you. Now, of course, you can move from that plan if you're not happy. There are ways to move from plan to plan. But at the end of the day, those are it. Those were the rules. So eventually people had no more choices. They're just like, I can go whatever I want. I don't want to join the plan. I'm free. It stopped. In the beginning, that was the case. They had the choice if they live in certain areas. If they didn't live in certain areas, they didn't have to. But if they live in certain areas, they must have joined a plan at that point. Ultimately, across all the nation now, pretty much everybody is mandated. You have Medicaid, you join the plan, and there are several plans you choose from. Each plan has a set of benefits that they offer you, typically under an HMO format, health management organization. You have primary care, you have a network, you have referrals, you have authorizations for services that you need. Very few services don't require referrals or prior authorization, and those are usually your preventative, visits, like, the wellness visits, initial visits, like once a year type of visit that you have to do, like the checkups. And then you also, like, for women, OBGYN types of services. Some of these services do not require the referral and are open. And there are some mental health, variations and things like that. But at the end of the day, you still have to be within a network. Exceptions are made to go outside a network in some plans, depending on the plan you pick. Some plans, went to the PPO option, but not on the Medicaid side, on the Medicare, and they give, more options. So therefore you could be in a network, or you can go outside a network, but it costs you a certain time. And again, as we break down in the next series or the next, shows within the series, we'll talk about, the Medicare piece, the Medicaid piece, and break it down more on the types of, products that they have. Again, in the Medicaid, actually is very simple. You have it, you join the plan, you have a primary care doctor, you have your referrals, you have your specialists, that you go to with the referrals, a document that you get from your primary, and that's about it. If you have to be admitted, so there's a process, prior authorization, unless it's an emergency, and you get admitted, through the emergency, and then there's a discharge process, and then you have a care manager that actually controls more or less, all your stuff. Sometimes things actually get denied because, some health plans may not feel that the prescribing doctor has prescribed the proper procedure or whatever the case may be. And so there are measures in the back, there are checks and balances, and there are teams within the MCO world that actually manage these things. So there are care management teams that actually literally work just in the back and behind the scenes to make sure that each and every one that qualifies for certain service get them. If there's a preventative measure, if there's anything that they can help them, they can actually coordinate their care and services in the back end. They do all that stuff for them. And they basically make sure that they get in, they get out. If they need any follow-up services, if they need to go to a rehab or skilled nursing facility, they do that. And some of these plans also offer services for the longer term. Some of them also offer long-term care products, and we'll talk about that, in the world of the Medicare managed care and the Medicaid dual products. So there's different things that we will discuss later on. But that's kind of, what the big picture as far as the managed care concept and how it started in the government programs. And it took literally from the commercial world and learned from it. They applied it, and today, the government has been an expert in it. Health plans have become a lot more savvy at it, and there's a lot more scrutiny. There's a lot more controls in place. It's not easy. It's not simple. Very complicated and complex. A lot of processes in the back end. From the beginning of an enrollment or before even enrollment to the enrollment, and as the person stays in the plan and all the options that they have. Things like that. So it's very also competitive. There are so many health plans out there, a lot of selection, and again, in different topics or show series that we're going to discuss, depending on which one, we'll talk about some of these things. When we talk about senior health, we'll talk about the different options that seniors have, different plans that they might have, and hopefully we'll get some guests from different plans to talk about their products and services and highlight a little bit of what's different about them versus others. Again, it's not biased. Everybody has the same, shot at coming to those shows and discussing their proposition and their offerings. So we'll see to that. And again, I am, like I said before, just bringing the information out and trying to set the stage, and then bring in the experts that are much more, knowledgeable than I am, and hopefully, share with you, public consumers and professionals, all the different things. If you're interested in this world, whether for a career path or you're in it and you need to learn more, some of these things can be helpful. If you're a consumer and you actually want to learn more about all these things, this can be also the right forum for it, and helps you ultimately, succeed in terms of your selection. And also, if you care, the more you know about your stuff, the better you can actually maneuver and navigate the system and get the best care that you deserve as a consumer. And if you are actually a professional within the actual industry and the managed care, circle, you will be able to navigate as well, and understand all the different components and processes, and hopefully it will help you succeed in your career path. So that's it. So again, like I said, in the Medicare world, that joined later on, again, in the early, I would say the 95, 94 time frame. And then, and at the time it was only original Medicare. You still have Medigap policies or Med-Sub policies. And then basically you would join a plan. People were very reluctant. Again, same concept. I have Medicare. I can go anywhere I want. Why would I have to be locked in? So the concept is always preventative care. And I always focus on that. All the fluff that, we all, provide in terms of when we present to our, customers, or the icing on the cake, as I call them, the excess benefit or supplemental benefits. Those are great benefits, but they're not really the core. The reason you join a managed care plan or an MCO, organization is really to get the best care for you. There is a team that is actually going to take care of you. So, and I'll simplify it this way. If you have Medicaid card, and this was before, and even today, if you have a Medicare card, you have a card that pays, well, partially to a degree, your care. Even if you have a Med-Sub policy that matches it, adds up, and helps you pay for your bills, that's great. But you don't have a care management team that is with you. When you have a managed care organization or managed care plan or a health plan that is taking care of you, then you have an actual physical team behind the scenes that is working for you. And every member in any of those plans has a dedicated care manager to them that has them in their caseload, and their responsibility is to follow their stuff. So some people are diabetic and they need to adhere to their to their medication. They have blood pressure, problems, and so on and so forth. They have high cholesterol. These care managers, and they're primarily nurses, their job is to actually monitor these cases and look at their adherence and things like that, follow up with their members, make sure that they get their meds. Sometimes they intervene, they come to the home, they do visits. There's a whole different thing that happens with the nurses. They really care about their members. And I can clearly say that. I've worked with a lot of the care management teams in different health plans. And the one thing is, as a salesperson, we were always looked at, well, you guys are the salespeople, we care less about these people, which is not true. We do care. We're actually the first ones to help them get the best care. And you can probably see it. I am actually passionate about this. I love to actually provide help and assist these folks to get the best care that they can get. That is for them, not any plan, just sign them up because I want an enrollment or a sale. No, it's put them in the right plan that makes more sense for them so they can get the best care that they can get, and they get the preventative care, ultimately wind up, with the best, health, in their life. So, and hopefully make them live healthy, happy for a long, long time. So that's the concept. But these nurses are really, really, really advocates of their members. They really, really go, the miles and the long distance for their members. They'll do whatever. I remember when we had Sandy in New York and Jersey. At the time I was with a company, and it's the Visit Nurses Services of New York, and we were in the division of the health plan. So they had their own health plan, again, provider, home care agency with a health plan. And when that happens, all sales and marketing activities, all we did is work with the nurses to provide the care in the community. And actually for 2 weeks, that's all we did. We would actually go, escort nurses, take them into buildings, make sure that the elderly are served, medications are delivered, everything was done. So we orchestrated all this, literally overnight. And it was like clockwork. Teams, troops, divisions, units, working day in, day out, and organizing the delivery for care for these folks. So, it's important. And every health plan has a team of very professional, very dedicated healthcare professionals and healthcare, case managers in the back end that help facilitate the care of these folks. So managed care organizations, their main objective, yes, they make money, and a lot of them actually not for profit. When they work for Medicare, with the government programs, there's typically few of them that are for profit, but a lot of them are not for profit. And even if they are for profit, they still have restrictions, they have limitations on what they can do. Yes, some of them, like the nationals, they do have for profit and they're public and so on and so forth, and their business lines have to actually deliver some sort of a business success. But within that, that's already projected. It's part of the actuaries, it's part of their projections and budgets. But at the end of the day, it's how many members and how they deliver, and they have to actually meet the same criteria as whether they're for profit or not. And even the not for profits, they still have surpluses, which ultimately are returned back, the next year in terms of benefit services that are added to the portfolio if they actually, have a successful year. But at the end of the day, all that stuff is benefiting the actual consumer, you as a member. And ultimately, again, if these companies are doing good, you as an actual professional within these these organizations will flourish as well, because these companies are growing, there's opportunity of growth, and so on and so forth. So again, it's a win-win for all. But really, the concept and also the other part is that because there's coordination, they work with the hospitals, they work with the providers, they work with the pharmacies, they work with the actual network of doctors that they have. Sometimes there's even incentives to make sure that these doctors go beyond the call of duty and make sure that some of these folks actually are flagged if they have any type of chronic issues and things like that, if they have medications. So when they can when they go to those doctors, everything's prescribed. And the more these folks the physicians are seeing their members and making sure that they stay healthy, focused, and all the stuff that is needed for them to maintain a healthy, lifestyle and stay in their homes, happy with their family, they do. And so a lot of these things, a lot of these programs are available. Some plans today, for example, it's a big thing with the coronavirus. And I, a couple of days ago, I had the pleasure to actually go to New York and do a little bit of a report in the field and see how it works out there, and what some of the reactions from various people, and it's a little kind of spooky a little bit. A lot of people have there's a lot of pressure out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear out there. Nobody knows what's going on. But the reason I mentioned this is that some of the products that these plans have, or managed care organizations have today, are literally, and the best, piece of it is that they can help in this type of situation. So telehealth, Teladoc as a company type, telehealth is basically a virtual thing, when you can actually, not a virtual, there's a remote access to your providers. They can look at you, they can triage you, they can talk to you, they can prescribe things, they can send it to a pharmacy. With that also being said, pharmacies also have delivery systems now. You don't even have to leave your home. With this whole pandemic, issue, a lot of people have this fear of going out of their homes and interacting and mingling with the crowds. Well, a lot of these services are available. I met with a company the other day, and their job is actually to do this. They're a pharmacy, and they're big. They have a delivery system. They can come up. There's they can get you your prescription right into your footsteps, right into your door, your steps. And so there's a lot of services. Managed care organizations do facilitate that. They do care. They want you actually to be receive the best care in a preventative way, and ultimately, control their cost. And with that being said, the government also wins in this whole picture, because the government programs, obviously, they have funds, and these funds now are regulated. They know exactly that they have 1 million people in the Medicaid state program. Well, they know exactly how much that program is going to actually collect on a month-to-month basis. They call them, premiums, or like, PMPM, per member per month type of premiums. And so the government's going to pay that, those agencies or these MCOs on a month-to-month basis for each member that they have. And then in exchange, that particular managed care organization is going to take that money and facilitate different contracts and agreements with providers, whether it's a capitation, which means they pay them a certain amount per month per member that they see, or they can do fee-for-service or scale type, where there is a list of fees for different services that the providers can bill for or send claims for. And ultimately, they know exactly what their costs will be in advance. Of course, there's always outliers, and you have people that are actually extremely ill, and so that's factored in. That's where the actuaries come in, and they do all these studies in advance, year after year, to see like what their risk ratios are, what the variation between high risk, low risk, things like that. And they come up with some nice composites, and then there's a membership projections, and then you ultimately have your payments on a month-to-month basis from the government. So the government gives each plan X amount of dollars based on what their premium is. They set up also the regulations and the star systems now. For example, the Medicare plans, they have a star system, so you have to meet certain criteria. They're just not going to pay you. They pay you based on your star ratings. The more you get, the more stars you have, the more you get payments. Thus, and therefore, you can actually give more to your members and provide the better services and better plans and better, benefit packages to them. So again, it's a win-win for all. The government has controls over the cost. The health plans, become successful, and ultimately, sometimes have a surplus or a profit. And their owners, if they're actually public, or if they have, individual owners, they have some profits as well in dividends. And then ultimately, the consumers or the members of these plans have the best, potential outcome. Their care is taken care of. They have a system. They have a team that's actually dedicated to them, and they don't have to worry about it. When they have something, they can call their plan, and they'll take care of them. They ensure that they have stuff. They provide transportation. A lot of these plans have a lot of these logistical, services available, and those things every year. There's new things that the government approves, and more services are added on to what these plans can offer. And of course, it's all beneficial to consumers. And and that's really what the big picture is about what a managed care organization is. Again, there are insurers at different level, and there's the commercial piece of it we talked about, but really, it's more on the government programs where it's a little bit trickier, but it does work. And, and the result is there's many plans across the nation. There are some community plans, and also there's some general nationals that have been in the business long enough, all over the states, and they provide the best care out there. So that being said, hope this particular series will be very interesting. It will touch, a lot of these series will touch on each other, kind of like, some topics are not redundant, but they basically tie in each other. So, but it doesn't matter, because each one of them will be, has its own focus. And this particular one will start driving more into like the processes, the operations of these plans, from soup to nuts, the operation behind the scenes, the care management, and we'll have actually a series about health economics, but we'll touch about all those things. And, I have some ideas about how we can bring this closer to you, and you might be able to see a lot more of the action with interviews and things like that, especially as we have some guests and experts on the panel or interviews. And as I, did the reports in the field, some of these reports will be at their facilities, so you get to see the operation hopefully live, and gives you a little bit of a good, visual on how it's all done, and how it impacts everyone. Whether you're an employee, a professional, or a consumer, you'll be able to enjoy all that and understand it a little bit more. Ultimately, you'll have a better and clearer view of what things, how things are being put together. As I said, the mission for us is to enlighten, educate, and bringing you behind the scene look of how your healthcare is, is conceived and administered, and how it operates. So hopefully I'll meet that particular mission and deliver that particular promise over time. And so with that being said, again, Hurricane H here. Thank you for watching the iHealth channel, and for listening on the iHealth radio. We will talk to you soon. We'll see you at the next show. Thank you very much. Have a great night.